Hi everyone, my name is Vince Gelman. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I feel the need to do a part 2 for the last video that's called It's Time to Let Go of Control. There's a lot more that I want to cover on this subject matter of letting go of control. And just to quickly summarize what that video was about, it's simply this, that those who have done enough inner work, enough healing work, who've committed to their path of spiritual growth fully enough, those who have gone deep within are prepared or are more prepared than others for the falling apart of the world that we see before us. So healing, just to remind you all, as I'm sure you know, is about falling apart to some degree, isn't it? It's about letting go of control. We cry, we shake, we sometimes vomit. I've vomited many times in my ayahuasca ceremonies. There's a release of control. There's an entering into vulnerability and entering into the uncharted that comes with the heroic journey of healing. And so as we learn to let go of control within, as we don't hold on as tightly within, it's easier to not have to hold on to the world falling apart. We can allow it to fall apart because we know what it's like to fall apart inside. And so that is a very quick summary of what that video is about. And I really encourage you to listen to it, to watch it. But here's where I'm going with the part 2. So when people do their healing work, one of the things that they say when they have a powerful shift, a deep release, a transmutation, some form of inner alchemy, is they say, and I've heard this enough times in my own clients, and I've experienced it enough times myself, they say, I feel more space inside. I feel more space. Now that space is the fertile ground for consciousness, higher consciousness, to come in and to run our human awareness more. We create space, which really ultimately is at the quantum level in our DNA. We create quantum space, we create space in our psychobiology for the light of our soul to come in and increasingly run our human awareness, increasingly run our entire psychobiology. So that is the blessing of healing, and that is the blessing of falling apart, is that when things fall apart, when things break apart, well, there's cracks and there's openings, and as there's more openings, more of higher consciousness, our higher self, the light of truth can come in and replace the bulwark, the fortress, the steeled nature that comes with trauma, that comes with having to hold ourselves together as part of a survival adaptation through lifetimes of adversity. So another way of describing what we're allowing in is life force. And I want you to imagine that life force is part of the great river of life, or the Tao, or the way, and that our souls are at one with this great river. And when we allow space in our system through falling apart, through opening, through heartbreak, which really is a breaking open, we merge more with that river. In other words, we merge more with our soul, or our soul merges more with our body, and we remember ourselves as at one with that great river. And we allow that great river that we are at one with to move us, to breathe us, to direct us, to see through our eyes, to taste through our tongue, to touch through our fingers. We are living at one with that great river, and that's how the great avatars, the great sages live, with their will consecrated to the will of the divine, the will of the great river. So what's happening right now is that we're going through a great initiation of breaking down the structures outside of ourselves in our world. We can clearly see so many of our institutions, our systems breaking down, falling apart, no longer functional. And what's happening is that there's an inner mirroring that we're being initiated into, which is a falling apart of the structures of the institutions inside that have been in a codependent relationship with those outer structures. So that falling apart, that breaking, that dismantling of those systems is in a way going to catalyze and is catalyzing a falling apart inside. And what we're doing is we're waking up from this dream of materialism. We're waking up from what Eckhart Tolle calls in his book, The Power of Now. We're waking up from the dream of object consciousness, and we're waking to what he calls space consciousness. But we can't wake up to space consciousness if we are contracted in a materialized identity, which is really the ego identity. And so that's the blessing of healing, is that it creates space. And one example of creating space is that with healing, we cultivate the witness consciousness, the consciousness that is able to observe the ego, observe our negative thinking, our limited beliefs, our limiting beliefs. We can observe that phenomenon in our system without identifying with it. Whereas before we would have been more lost in those thoughts and identify with our ego. Now we can stand back and we can observe without getting caught up in the story of that little I, the illusion self, the illusional self, the temporal self. So in that witnessing, there's space, and that space comes from doing our healing work. Space is obviously created just by clearing out the clutter of old, clearing out the trauma imprints, having them transmuted or alchemized out of our system. And as they're cleared out at the quantum level, because really that's ultimately where they're stored, is in the DNA, then quantum space is created for a higher operating system, a higher technology of our soul to come in and anchor in our DNA and again run our psychobiology. So again, what we're doing here is we're creating space. We're creating space. Now, as we create more space, as we fall apart, and as space is created, and as our higher self comes in, well, now we're awakening, aren't we? We're merging back with our soul, and we're merging back with the river of life, and we're allowing that consciousness to run our psychobiology, to run through our neural pathways, our neural highways, to travel through our meridians, to travel through our brain, to amplify and to ignite and to enlighten our organs, to harmonize our organs so that they're working more in a unified way. I mean, really, that's what health is about. It's about integration. It's about harmony. It's about union. I mean, health means whole. So I used to see an osteopath, which is a healer, and he taught me about how my organs weren't communicating with each other that well, but through healing, my organs began to communicate with each other much better. I mean, what is a cancer cell? A cancer cell is a cell that has become isolated. It is not communicating anymore with the other cells. And so what does that cancer cell do? It either self-implodes, it destroys itself, or it goes on a rampage. And that's what we see when we have a school shooting. It's someone who is like that cell, who's very alone, very isolated, very depressed, and goes on a rampage, okay? So that's an outer manifestation of cancer. So what we're doing with healing is that we're creating union, we're creating integration. Remember, health means whole. Health means whole. And the way that we really tap into our wholeness is by tapping into our holiness, and that's the holiness of our soul. So with health comes a psychobiological integration, an integration at the level of our physiology. But what also comes is what I call a cosmic integration, where we integrate more fully with our higher self. We embody our higher self more, and we integrate more fully with higher cosmic forces, higher cosmic impulses, what some people might call the Christ impulse or the Buddha impulse. And we're living more as a cosmic being. We're living more as a cosmic being. One of the things that I've spoken about and I've written about is that our neurons are really, in a way, mirror the stars. In fact, the stars are the neurons of the cosmic mind. So part of cosmic integration, part of awakening, is for the neurons, our human neurons, to be so infused with light that what happens is that we're increasingly running off of this cosmic neurobiology. Our human mind merges with the cosmic mind, and now the stars are our neurons. Got it? That's what awakening is. That is a high state of a cosmic consciousness where the stars are our neurons, and we're operating from that higher cosmic mind. So that is a way to understand cosmic integration. I'm going to say this again one more time in one sentence. Stars are the neurons of the cosmic mind. And the more we allow this Christ light in, this Buddha light in, this God light in, really, again, we're allowing it to run through our neurobiology. And we operate from that cosmic consciousness. But we need to unravel. We need to unravel from lifetimes of trauma and programming that has made us become contracted. That same osteopath said to me one time years ago when I was really struggling with my trauma, he said to me that my body was like steel. Okay, so my body was like steel. It was definitely not fluid. It was definitely not flexible. It was definitely not loose. So trauma, what it does is that it makes us more rigid. So when you're scared as a child or as an adult, two things happen very quickly, almost immediately. The moment you are scared, let's say you look at your father and your father has like terrifying eyes and you're terrified by looking at his eyes. Two things that are affected right away is posture and breath. So in terms of posture, your shoulders may go up, your head may turn a bit sideways. And in terms of breath, you will either shorten your breath or hold your breath. Either shorten your breath or hold your breath. Remember that when we breathe less, when we become more shallow in our breathing, it's a way to manage feelings. It's a way to manage feelings. So that's why breath work, I'm a certified breath worker. I don't do breath work anymore. But when people bring in a lot of breath, through breath work, what happens is that it unlocks old feelings. And people generally are not breathing very well in our society because what they're doing is they've got a pattern that goes back decades of managing their emotions by shortening their breath. So this happened perhaps when they were at home as a child. They learned to manage their emotions by not breathing in too deeply. And so there was a chronic pattern that began in childhood of managing emotions, managing the overwhelm that comes with being scared as children, managing that by managing your breath. So, and in terms of the posture, I've done so much work with my clients over the years around shoulders. People have chronic shoulder issues because, again, this is what we do when we're scared. This is what we do when we're scared. What healing is about is allowing the body to learn to relax. Relaxation, safety, trust, they're all related. As I feel more safe, I can relax. As I relax, I can trust more. My body can let go. My shoulders can come down. Again, if we were scared a lot as children, we might end up having this be our physiology that stays with us for decades. Right? Same with the neck. that people can have real chronic neck issues, and it's very common for people to have neck issues because the neck is swiveling the head is a protective response, isn't it? Okay, you again, your mother, your father gives you a really scary look. It's natural to go like this a bit, isn't it? But if you're living with that parent and you're experiencing their scariness, their scary look, their violent behavior, if you're enduring that for years, then this, like this, can become a pattern that gets stuck in your system. And then what happens is that you end up having really, sore shoulders, neck issues, etc., etc. can create all sorts of problems. So I'm just giving you a couple of examples of how what happens is that with trauma, with our protective responses, we brace, we tighten, we steel. Okay, now that is the opposite of being loose and open and spacious. Okay, so it's harder for us to be operating from a fluid river of life, right? A fluid river of life. A river is fluid, okay? So the river of life is fluid. And the reason why children are closest to God is because they still feel that impulse in their body, because they feel the river of life in their body. And so they move in cartwheels, in spirals, okay? So, and then adults end up being much more rigid and serious and overly responsible and et cetera, and we don't realize that how much we're operating from a trauma psychophysiology. So healing is about creating space. But right now what's happening in the world is that with the world falling apart, it's going to catalyze and initiate people to fall apart. And in falling apart, there's a doorway, there's an opportunity, and that includes heartbreak, breaking open. There's a doorway and there's an opportunity for more fluidity to take place in their system. And that includes a fluidity of emotion, because there's going to be a lot of grief over the next while, especially as people learn the truth of what's going on in the world, all the dark agendas out there. There's going to be a fluidity that's going to happen, that's going to be forced upon people, a fluidity in particular of grief. So those tears, that's the river of life. That's the river of life. It's a beautiful expression of the river of life. Okay, so with the falling apart, people are going to be initiated into feeling what hasn't been felt. And as they feel more deeply, as they finally allow themselves to feel more deeply old emotions, they become more fluid and they become more spacious. They're not holding on as tightly, and they open up to their higher self. They open up to their soul. The soul has more space to play in their psychobiology. Now, people may think that the emotion and the outrage and the general feelings that they're feeling that are catalyzed by what's going on out there, they may think that has to do just with that. But how I see it is that it's going to catalyze emotion that is related to that, is related to the dark agenda out there, all the horrific things going out there, but it's also going to unlock deeper, older, unprocessed emotions. So it reminds me of, in my old somatic therapy practice, how I would have clients come to me and they would have a car accident, and they would say to me, Vince, I can get this counseling for free because the insurance company is going to pay for it. But the thing is that for me to be covered, I need you to focus just on the trauma related to the car accident, and I need you to document it so that I can send in the documents to the insurance company. But the thing is that the accident and whatever trauma was opened, was caused, is not going to be separate from older unprocessed trauma. You can't just process trauma from the car accident without addressing the deeper unprocessed traumas that are also in the psychobiology. It reminds me of a business coach who tries to do business coaching without addressing the whole human being, the whole life. You can't truly coach someone effectively in their business without also addressing the personal, the human being as a whole. So it's one system. It's one system. So what's going to get unlocked in people because of this initiation into falling apart out there, into the world falling apart, and with these dark truths coming out, what's going to be unlocked in people is also going to open them to older, unprocessed stuff in their system. And as it all begins to wash through, ideally with the support of very skilled, wise healers, then space is made, and then light can come in, more of the higher self can anchor in, and they merge more fully with the river of life. I created a video a while back, and I talked about emergency. We're in an emergency right now in the world. But the thing is, from that emergency, there's an emergence. There's an emergence of what's going to be released from the body. Okay, an emergence of old emotion, an emergence perhaps of old memories, of old truths suppressed in the body. And in that, there's a merging with the soul, with our higher self. Emergency, emergence, merging. So I wanted to create this part 2 video for you so that I didn't leave you just at the place of, okay, everything's falling apart and we need to let go of control, but to really provide a vision of hope that there's a plan here, a larger divine plan, and that is to fall apart so that space is created for the dawn of light to come in and shine in our human awareness, shine in our heart. And therefore what's happening is that we are birthing the new world, we're birthing the golden age, we're birthing the age of light through this very difficult rite of passage. We're birthing it through each one of us. We bring in the light, but to bring in the light, we have to make space for it. We need to fall apart and let go of control so that we can surrender to the river of life, which really is not something we can control. We have to surrender to the unpredictable, to the unknown, truly to the unknowable. And when we do, we merge back into the truth of who we are. So thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoy this video. As always, I like to remind you that I'm leading regular online healing and activation ceremonies. Please check out the link in the description. And as always, leave your comments, subscribe, click notifications, click like, and thank you so much for being here with me today. Thank you.